So this is the biggest mistake, I think, facing really, really smart people. I think really, really smart people, and this is most of my students, they're like off the charts, smart, creative, brilliant. They make the mistake of thinking, if I have enough book smarts, if I have enough technology smarts, I don't need the people smarts. Now, here's what research from Princeton University found.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, okay.
Because I already know what you're going to say in a sense, yeah.
Okay, so this study completely changed my work and changed my life. It was done by Dr. Susan Fisk in 2002, and since then they've been able to replicate it and build on it and build on it. So this is very solid research. What she found, very highly charismatic people have to have the perfect blend of two traits. And this is where it's really, this is why highly charismatic people are so unique. And this is why we love them so much. To be highly charismatic, to be compelling, to be captivating, you must have a perfect blend of warmth and competence. And we talked about this the very, very first time we met, but since then, so much more has come out about it. Very, very smart people make the mistake of showing up as all competent. They try to blow you away with their numbers and their facts and their stats and their data, but they're seen as cold.
Yeah.
They're seen as intimidating. On the other side, you have people who are highly warm. They have competence, but there's not a balance. They show up as highly likable, highly friendly, but they're interrupted. They're told that they're not being taken seriously.
They're not credible.
Right.
Yeah.
People forget having met them before. And so I think that most people problems, I'm even going to say all people problems. I mean, all people problems stem from an imbalance between your warmth and competence. And so not only do I think that charisma is essential for being successful, I actually think it's the only way that people will be open to your competence.
So you could be all the book smarts in the world,
Yeah.
you could have the highest IQ and remember everything on any test, or you could be an encyclopedia of wisdom and information. But what I'm hearing you say, if you don't have charisma, at least some of it, then people won't take you seriously, or they won't care as much, or they won't be as engaged.
It's not just engaged. There's two questions that humans ask themselves about the person they're with. And this happens immediately in every interaction. By the way, video too. We forget that this is not just in person. This is happening the moment you pop on video. It's happening the moment someone opens your LinkedIn profile. I did a whole bunch of research on LinkedIn profiles specifically because that's where a lot of our first impressions are happening. Okay, when people see your LinkedIn profile, when people see you on video, on Zoom, the first question they ask themselves, and it is chronological, the first question they ask is, can I trust you? Basic instinct, are you going to be my ally or my enemy? Can I trust you? The very second question they ask is, can I rely on you? So when you're in a meeting, on a date, in a call, in a pitch, a negotiation, on LinkedIn, the two signals that you want to cue people with as quickly as possible is, yes, you can trust me, and yes, you can rely on me. The problem is that most professionals right now are going mute. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but it feels like in the last 5 or 10 years, we've gone towards ambivalence. You know, we've gone towards, I'm not going to show anything. I'm going to be as professional and sterile as possible. And so we've taken out cues from all these assets, and then people have a really hard time trusting us. They have a really hard time listening to us. We wonder why people are slow to reply to our emails. It's because we're not cueing enough. We have to have hundreds of cues to answer those two questions.
Interesting. So how do we create more trust and reliability instantly?
Yes, okay. So here, let's talk about trust first, because it is chronological. We have to trust someone to rely on them. That's why starting with your competence doesn't always work. So trust. So the very first thing is a weird one. It's a really weird one that I'm gonna talk about first.
So you don't have to be competent to be trusted.
To be charismatic, you have to be competent and trustworthy.
Okay.
Right? So we want that perfect balance.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Vanessa Van Edwards, and my take on her top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, use powerful words.
Charisma is the perfect blend of being likable and powerful. Whew, that was really, whoa.
Boom, homie. We rocked that in
like
very few
6 words or something.
All right, so likable and powerful. So now break those two elements down for me. So
Yes.
likability.
Okay, so I think that there's a mistake that happens with very smart people. This is the one that we see the most often, is really smart, intelligent people. They want to hit you with their smarts. They want to be impressive. And so they come into interaction or on a video call and they're like, I want to blow you away. So they mention accolades and numbers and fancy facts and rehearsed answers. And people will see them as impressive, capable, powerful, but cold, intimidating, hard to talk to. And this is what the research found. Competence without warmth leaves people feeling suspicious.
Suspicious? Why suspicious?
Suspicious. This is from Dr. Susan Fiske. That is a direct quote. I memorized it because it took my breath away when I read it. Because I realized for so long, as you know, I'm a recovering awkward person, I would try to, impress people and make sure that they liked me. And so I would try to blow them away with smarts. And the problem is that when you do that, it leaves people feeling suspicious. And that's because when we don't have likability softens our power. When we add the warmth plus competence, so likable, friendly, compassionate, trustworthy, plus capable, powerful, impressive, that's the sweet spot. In the study, what they did is they had participants look at short clips of politicians. They didn't know these politicians. They just had them watch these clips of politicians. And they asked them two different questions. Who is warm, likable, and trustworthy? And who is dominant, powerful, and capable? The politicians who had only one of those were not rated as charismatic. They were not as successful.
They weren't as successful in real life or just in the study?
In the study, they were ranked very low on the charisma scale. So they could be seen as trustworthy, but if they weren't also powerful, they were not seen as compelling. They were not seen as convincing. They weren't seen as memorable. So the biggest challenge I think we have to be charismatic is to show up as our warmest, most competent self, but it has to be that balance.
Of course, and that's why it's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's like, talk about feeling like you're being pulled in two opposite directions. And I find it, I don't want to use the wrong word here. I find it easy to be warm.
Yeah.
And I find it easy to be intense. I find it difficult to be warm and intense. Although you didn't use the word intense, you used powerful, but I guess I don't like throwing that moniker at myself. But yes, so warm and intense I find extraordinarily difficult.
Yes.
Warm or intense, that's a lot easier.
I'm going to make you feel better.
Please.
Okay. Actually, the research finds they can be chronological.
Okay.
And this is extremely helpful. Like, this is like next level. Yes,
which
warmth
should come
and competence.
first?
Warmth.
Okay.
Okay,
Makes sense.
Why? As humans, when we first meet another human, the very first question we ask about them is, can I trust you? Right? So like from across the room, on a video call, in an email, we are looking, can I trust you? Are you on my side? Are you a threat? Can I make sure that I'm not going to be at harm? Not just physical harm, but even like emotional harm. Are you on my side? The next question we answer, and it is the next question, is can I rely on you? So let's take an email, for example, because that's we can control all the elements. In a really good email, we do this sometimes naturally, but not always. The subject and the opener should be warm. Maybe the opening line is also warm, and the content, the body of the email is competent, 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 and the sign-off is your choice. So for example, when we look at words, I love the power of word choice. What research finds is when we read words like collaborate, we are more likely to be collaborative. When we read words like power, we are more likely to be powerful. Here's a specific study. It's a little complicated. Can I go deep?
Yeah, please.
This study blew my mind. So here's what they did. They had participants come into the lab and they gave them a quiz, a math test they had to solve. One set of participants got a set of directions that was very simple. It said, please take this test, take your time, answer all the questions correctly. The second group got the same set of directions, but they sprinkled in a couple of high achievement words or achievement-oriented words. So achievement-oriented words are like win, succeed, master, achieve. We love those words. They give us the tinglies. Okay, they just sprinkled them in. They wanted to know if just adding in a couple of achievement-oriented words would change participants' behavior. Just those achievement-oriented words made them get more answers right. So it actually changed their performance. In other words, reading the word win makes you think more like a winner. It changes your physiology to be more like a winner. Second, this is where I think it gets more interesting. It doubled their desire to work on the task. So it made them work on the quiz longer, and it made them enjoy working on the quiz. And lastly, it actually changed their physiology. So when we read...
What were they measuring?
So how many questions I got right.
But when you say it changed their physiology, how do we know?
Yes, they are measuring the amount of testosterone or dopamine or oxytocin.
They took their blood levels?
I believe it was either blood or saliva.
Wow.
To see if their physiology would change. So when we read words like this, it actually changes how we think and how we feel. And so I share this because I think we send emails or we have a LinkedIn profile and we throw it in. Hey everyone, today we have to get a lot of things done. It's gonna be a really busy week. Let's make sure that we overcome all those challenges. When you write words like busy, people are literally primed to be busier. When you write words like challenge, they're more likely to be challenged. So going back to warmth and competence, it's a challenge for everyone. If you open up your last 5 sent emails to important people, only the important ones, and you count the number of warm words you're using and the number of competent words you're using, you will see exactly how you're coming across to others. But the best thing you can do is open with warmth, hit them with competence, and end with purpose.
Rule number 3, build up the connections.
If you can cue someone for your warmth and competence right off the bat, it actually speeds up your connection.
And is that in every situation, whether you're dating, it's a work situation?
Every situation. So for example, if behind me on my YouTube channel, I often put chemicals, like I put my favorite chemicals behind me. The reason I did that is because I tend to come across as highly warm. And warmth is great, it's trust, it's likability, but I want people to take me seriously, right? I want them to take me seriously whether they're just browsing my YouTube videos or they're listening to me. And I was having trouble dialing up the competence piece. And so I realized I had to add competence cues right off the bat so people knew, this is a serious video. The moment I added those chemicals behind me, it added competence in that very first frame, and people knew, this is a learning video. Right? Yes, it will be a little funny sometimes. I'm only funny sometimes. Yes, I hope that I can trust her, but actually this is a learning video. And so what I want you to think about, whether you're dating or you're talking about your social interactions or your LinkedIn profile, is what are your intentions? Right? Like, what do you want to show? Is it warmth? Is it a lot of likability warmth? Is it competence? That's what you should be cueing for. And that's also what others are cueing you for. So the next level here is reading people. When you're looking at someone's profile or picture, or you meet them for the first time, what cues are they sending to you to try to cultivate your impression of them?
Okay, I love that. Let's keep going down this because this is fascinating. So let's say you're meeting someone for the first time. I'd love for you to break down the cues on certain things, like the non-verbal and the verbal, because you're so amazing at being very specific. And then I'd love to dive into, then how do you know in those moments? So let's take dating, right? Or a high stress situation. And high stress is an anxiety is happening because you've got the excitement, you've got the nerves, all of this that comes with any situation where you may not be 100% confident. So how do you decipher the cues that are accurate or the cues that are accidental due to the circumstances?
Okay, that's one of our biggest challenges as cue readers, right? Because some of our cues we can control, right? Like I can sit up straight, I can have good posture, I can smile at you when I want. Like I can purposefully do all those things. But actually what is more accurate, what we know is not put on or forced, are the small cues that people do, especially while they're listening. So I find that when you're reading people, you can read while they're talking, but actually it's much more interesting to read while they're listening. And that's because when someone's talking, they're in presentation mode, right? Like they've either rehearsed the answer. So let's say that there's 2 different kinds of people with ill intentions and people with good intentions. If someone has ill intentions, they've rehearsed what they want to manipulate. They've rehearsed what they want to say, right? So bad actors will present themselves with the perfect kind of cues they think can add to it. Good actors, people with good intentions, didn't rehearse anything, but they're just presenting their best self. That's all on purpose. What's more interesting is when they're listening. When someone's listening, they're not rehearsing anymore. They're off the clock and their brain is much more focused on you. And so what I like to think about is, okay, what can I observe while someone is listening? That's actually much better for reading people. Same thing on Zoom calls. My favorite thing on a Zoom call is if I'm presenting, I make my face small. I don't want to see my own face. I pull up other people's faces and I specifically look at people's faces on video to see what are they doing while they're listening. Are they open to me? Are they agreeing with me? And so we can talk about those cues of what we're looking for. But I like listening cues better.
Rule number 4, like the most people.
Everyone wants to be popular. And I think a lot of the people that say they hate the popular kids secretly wish they were the popular kids. Of course. Every human has this urge to be popular. What makes someone popular?
Yes.
What is it really?
I actually think that that's the question that drove my work in the beginning, right? Because of course, my first bad social interactions were when the popular kids were too popular for me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that was the first time I ever questioned, how can I be popular?
Yeah.
What makes them popular? So what's really interesting is my hypothesis about this, and I wonder what yours was.
Yeah.
My hypothesis about this was like, oh, it's the prettiest girls. It's the most athletic guys. It's maybe the smartest people.
Yeah.
Did you?
I'm gonna be honest. I always thought about it as those people have a gift that I don't.
Okay. So
Like whether it's
some kind of aptitude that you don't have.
Yeah,
Okay.
whether it's looks, because we all know the like pretty or handsome awkward person that blows it all, right? It's like, man, you're so pretty,
I don't
but
know
you
that
are
person,
so
actually.
awkward, right?
All the pretty people I know are pretty charismatic.
Everyone, you've never met like a really pretty
I did.
person
Genevieve,
with like
yeah, I
really
did.
bad posture or whatever. You're just like, oh, you should be like you are, like you're good
That's
looking.
true. That's true.
Okay.
I did. Yeah.
So my point is, I couldn't pin it on any one thing. I just always,
It's like,
it was just like, oh, you have something.
you have that it.
I don't,
So I always thought it was like the ists.
Yep.
The smartest, the funniest, the prettiest, the most athletic.
Yeah,
the
that one.
ists,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
And then I read the study by Van Sloan, and what he did is, I think he's probably like me, where he's like a recovering awkward person. He was like, why?
Yeah.
He's an academic, and he studied thousands of high school kids,
Yeah.
literally trying to figure out what makes the popular kids popular. He had
Yeah.
all these hypotheses. And he looked at a lot of variables, GPA, athleticism, ranked for looks. I mean, he did all of it. And he found that there was one single variable that predicted the popular kids.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. What is it?
The popular kids, of all the kids in their school, liked the most other people.
Wow.
In other words, to be liked, you actually have to like the most people.
And that's a hard one to fake.
That's a really hard one to fake.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about this is that he breaks it down in the study where basically, if you want to be popular, you go into the first day of high school, or you go into the first day of your job, or you go into a conference, or you go into a networking event, and you think, how can I like everyone in this room?
Yeah.
Not, how can everyone in this room like me?
Yeah, damn it.
And so
That's so true. You know, because like even if you're on step one of like this stuff, you're like, all right, there's only 300 people here, and I can get every one of them to like me.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you go in and you're like, I need to find a way to like every single person in here.
Yeah.
So what do you do more of? And he literally said, when these kids walk down the hallway, they are not smiled at more, they smile more.
Yeah.
They are not nodded at more, they nod more. So in other words, when kids would walk through the hallway, they were like, oh, like he's not gonna like me. But then he was like, hey. And you're like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
So it's actually being the liker. Like that's how you do it. And that is easy. I think that's easier than walking into a room and saying, how do I become likable? Because it means that every conversation you have, and I have a whole lot of strategies about this, but the most basic one is, what questions can I ask to find out everything I like about this person?
Yeah.
That's it.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, be socially assertive.
I think the more that we can take control of our cues. So, you know, I've always struggled with confidence. I've always tried to grasp that, you know, that amazing spirit. I think the only way to do it is control for me. That I think that
Controlling the environment?
controlling my cues.
Okay.
So I think that the only way that I feel confident is if I know, okay, I have this important email I have to send to a team member, and here's the information I have to get across. I do the same thing as you. I think most people do. I get the information out first. I typically write like, here's what has to get done. And then I add in the warmth, typically in the first 10 words. And this is a really easy way to do it for yourself. This is only when it's important. It doesn't have to be every email. I think, okay, what do I want this person to feel? If I were with them in person, what would I want to gift them? Would I want to gift them excitement? like get excited
Gift
about
them.
Gift. I think it's a gift. I think that we can prevent burnout by gifting the right chemicals, right? Like it takes effort, like a gift. So if I'm like, okay, I want this person to be excited about this project, I'm going to use words that cue for excitement. And this is literally what the research shows, that when we say things like, what are you excited about? Or I can't wait for this project, or I'm looking forward to this, those are excitement words. Or do I want to gift strategy? Do I want to gift efficiency? Do I know that we are pushed for time and I want to gift streamline, collaborate, brainstorm, credible? The more I use those words, the more I am literally gifting that testosterone, that chemical. So I think that that's how we can next level. It's like next level. We can gift those chemicals to people in our in-person interactions, but also in our emails and our videos.
What I find really interesting about that is that you're cueing not only to other people, but to yourself, even selecting the word gift, which is an interesting reframe for me as I think about that, think about the different interactions and what I want to communicate. But even choosing that word feels very different than communicate or even give.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. Getting the framing device right so that whatever your sort of emotional goals there. And you just cued me that you want to talk. This is so interesting. And you go into detail about this, like the cues that people will do.
Yeah.
Walk me through what just happened in the last 9 seconds.
Okay, so I really wanted to reframe you because you were wanting to get it done, which was good. And we were talking about like, how do we make it better? How do we get it done? And the reframe I wanted to give was, this is like a gift.
And how did you interrupt me though, without saying a word?
So first I was using the word gift, which I think already was like your brain was like, oh, that's something different. And then also I leaned into you, right? And I widened my eyebrows a little bit just to show like we're open, like we're getting into this. So like those were 2 high warmth cues. So when we think about nonverbal, I was trying to cue you for warmth, right? So I leaned a little bit more. And by the way, this changes our brain. So the study that I share in the book, which is just try leaning in a little bit. It will actually activate a different area of your brain. So when I lean in a little bit, you lean in a little bit more, like your head actually leaned in a bit, which activates your motivation.
And then even just taking a breath and slightly opening your mouth, I was like, I know. It is so interesting. I knew exactly that you had something to say, and I think we all take it for granted how you can use that. In the book, you walk people through, hey, if there's somebody that's talking too much and you need to interrupt them, but you don't want to like, please.
Okay. So this is like a superpower. So if I have anyone who's introvert, anyone who's awkward, anyone who lacks social assertiveness, I think social assertiveness is actually like a hidden trait that everyone should learn, because to be socially assertive, it means you're putting your needs forward, but you're being polite about it. Right? So you're not people pleasing, you're not bending over. Okay, so this is if you have an interrupter. So you have someone who constantly interrupts you. You have a couple techniques. First is the open mouth, which I just did to you. So the open mouth, I call it the fish. So if you want to say something, you... right? And the bigger the open, the more they'll notice. This works on video calls, this works in person. So if someone's talking to you, you're like, oh, she needs to say something. And you'll bookmark it. You'll literally be like, oh, wait, she has to say something. So try opening the mouth. The second one is we are very cued that a hand raise or even a finger raise means one moment, can I say something? And so if you have someone who's talking or who interrupted you, you can literally a little bookmark or a little it's like a pupil, right? Like you're raising your hand. And the next level is you actually reach out and touch them. And that's like my least favorite, but if you really have someone.
Why least favorite?
Because in this world, if we're 6 feet apart, right, it's really hard to cross that space boundary. And also some people aren't comfortable with touch. So I reserve that one if you're only like, I really need to get their attention.
Rule number 6, avoid narcissistic people.
There are certain cues that we cannot control. And if you have bad intentions, they will leak. So I call these danger zone cues. So in the book I talk about, there's 4 different types of cues. There's highly warm, nonverbal, verbal, and vocal. So these are things that make you highly warm, highly trustworthy, highly likable. There's highly competent cues, verbal, nonverbal, and vocal. And then there's charismatic, the ones that are just knock it out of the park. Like they're just great. And the last one is danger zone cues. Danger zone cues are the cues that get us into trouble. They're the cues that liars use.
Ooh.
They're the way that we leak guilt and shame. Actually, shame is not a bad thing. It's only when you have guilt that you've done something wrong. So in the danger zone, it is very hard to inhibit those cues. So I teach them because I want people to be able to spot them.
Okay, what are those cues?
Okay, so there's a bunch, and let's talk about as many as we can. So
and this might be someone who's very successful, someone who's accomplished a lot potentially, someone that seems very credible, someone that could be in a power position, owning a business or having influence online or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Extremely successful. They could be successful. They could seem credible, trustworthy.
Yes.
But might be super narcissistic underneath.
Yes, so there's a couple danger zone cues that we can control, which a manipulative person could inhibit, right? So, for example, one that I found that I talk about in the book is Lance Armstrong. So Lance Armstrong, for those who don't know, spoiler alert, Lance Armstrong was doping. So if you haven't, someone was like, there was spoilers in the book. And I was like, you haven't heard of that news yet? I also talk about Britney Spears in the book because there's some really interesting cues on her, which I think why we're worried about her, why her fans worry. She shows a lot of danger zone cues.
Yes.
So Lance Armstrong, in one of his early interviews on Larry King Live, he's asked about doping. And he does what's called a lip purse. So a lip purse is, when we push our lips into a flat line, we mash our lips together. That is a universal withholding gesture. So when we're literally trying to hold something in or hold something back, or we don't like what's being said or heard, we go. And so you'll notice that when someone has been asked something they don't like, when someone had to lie, a lot of the time, so we did a massive experiment in our lab where we asked people to send in videos of themselves lying. Actually, you play it in the book. It's called Lie to Me. So I have you lie to me, play this lie to me game to diagnose your own tells. It's very important to know your own tells because you should know what your danger zone cues are when you're leaking them. And one of the, you should know those. It's good to know those in the back of your pocket. Do that with your partner, right? You want them to know what those are too. So one thing that we noticed is on lies. That was one of the biggest indicators. So in Lie to Me game, we ask you to do two things. We ask you to tell us an embarrassing story, your most embarrassing story, and then a fake embarrassing story. And we want to see if we can tell the difference. If we cut the clips, can we know which one is the fake one?
Man, that'd be interesting.
Yes, and it's amazing. You see the same danger zone cues over and over again. Right before someone's about to lie and tell their fake embarrassing story, they go, okay, and they lip purse right before they're going to do it. And that's because we don't like lying. Our body knows it's going to get us into trouble. So we're like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And we hold ourselves back. You ask a woman, how much do you weigh? And she'll go, like literally close those lips because no woman wants to talk about how much she weighs. So it's a withholding gesture. And so that's the first thing is you want to look for some of the bigger cues, withholding gestures. Lip purse is one, a sudden distancing behavior. So we also noticed that liars in our lab, they wanted to like get away from the lie, like as if it smelled. So like when they were telling their most embarrassing story, they'd be like leaning in, using gestures. Oh, it was so embarrassing. And remember, embarrassing stories are negative.
Right.
It's not like it's a positive memory. It's like people are like, and they do a shame touch. The universal shame touch is when people touch their fingers to the side of their forehead.
This happened and I'm
oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed.
So they usually tell the truth and they do like this.
Yes, because they're actually embarrassed, right? So these are all good, like congruent, right? We're seeing embarrassment and shame gesture. We're seeing negative nonverbal and people shaking their head. I can't believe that happened, right? Like they're so upset that happened. We're seeing cringes. We're seeing fear. We're seeing sadness. Congruent. Right? Like that's all congruent emotion. On the bad stories, we often see people will lip purse and then they try to get away from it. So they'll say a statement and then, and they're literally like as far away, I hope I'm not messing up my audio there, as far away from the lie as they can possibly get. They're leaning back. They'll sometimes literally lean their head back in the chair. And that's because physically we want to distance ourselves from things we don't like. So we're looking for lip purses, sudden distancing. And there's a lot of cues that we can't control, right? So blink rate is another one. Eye blocking behavior is liars have higher blink rates.
They blink more.
Yeah, actually in Britney Spears, she had a really interesting interview that I actually break this down on my YouTube channel, so you don't even have to read the book if you want to see it, where I break down the cues in this early interview. This is right before the conservatorship started. So very, very full of cues because it's right before it happened. And she gets asked a very difficult question, and she, all of a sudden, her blink rate goes from a normal rate to a high rate. So she starts to really quickly blink her eyes like this, and that is because when we're really nervous, we literally want to close out stimuli to not see what's happening so we can process what's happening. So blink rate is something that a lot of manipulative people cannot control. In fact, when I share this, people go, oh, I know a very narcissistic, manipulative person who has a very high blink rate.
Interesting.
Because they're literally like trying to block out the lie or the manipulation. And so they'll sound really good, but they're like really like processing a lot. And you're like, why are they blinking so much? And it's because they're trying to process.
Oh my goodness.
So just knowing those cues are not all bad on their own, but it's important to know what those cues look like so you can spot them. And I really think manipulative people will get caught eventually. It is very hard to fake competence. It is very hard to fake warmth. It's hard to keep that up. And so for the long game, yes, you can learn a couple of these cues and try to master your way around them. But for the long game, it's really hard.
Rule number 7, don't focus on sounding smart.
This is the problem. Again, smart people suffer with this. This is not a problem of people who aren't smart enough. This is actually the problem of people who are too smart. Very, very smart people, they prep for an interview or negotiation or a presentation, and they prep their ideas. They want their ideas to be amazing, right? They're pitching to their boss or their team. They have their dream job, and they're like, I have to have the perfect answer. And so they script out the perfect answer. And they go in there and they're blindsided. They don't know why. They're giving the perfect answers, but people are on their computer checking their email. They're not getting any nods or any smiles or any leans. They're not seeing any of those warmth cues, and they're like, what's going on? And that's just like Jamie Siminoff. If you are smart, you might run into this problem where people underestimate you and your ideas because you are not delivering them with the right competence and warmth.
Rule number 8, pay attention to body language.
In romance and in business. In romance, it's very good to know if you've brought up something that embarrasses someone, that someone's ashamed of, because oftentimes they'll verbally say it's okay. So let's say that you're talking about debt, right? So yeah, I just paid off my last student loan. Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. It's great to hear that. And you see that they've touched their forehead. There's some sort of shame or embarrassment talking about money, debt, right? So that can be an interesting cue to either make a mental note of or go a little bit deeper or maybe be gentle around. So I like to look for shame as like a gentle, and in business, the same thing. So like if I'm talking to someone, I was just working with someone who is a wedding photographer. And she says that sometimes if budget's a problem or there's a family member that there's like an embarrassing family member, she will look for the shame gesture and then she knows to tread gently. So like, for example, if she's talking, she's okay, my rate is $3,000 for a wedding, and you see a guy go, oh gosh, or the wife, it's like this. She'll say, I have payment plan options, and I have a couple of ways that, if that seems a little bit high for you. So she'll actually offer so she doesn't get a no. Because she realized when she didn't address the cue, she would never get a call back.
Whoa.
She'd get a no.
I
didn't know why. She'd say, why? But she's like, once I started looking for shame, I could see where the hangups were. So I think that's the other thing about this is I don't want people to be blindsided anymore. I don't want people to be like, why did he say no? Why did I get a no? Why did she ghost me? I don't want people to think that anymore. And so I think that looking for these cues, it gives us another level of information. And information is empowering.
So true, God. There's one thing I wanted to ask you though. Going back to the modes of lying.
Yes.
So how do you start to decipher those modes and know if someone's lying or not? So for instance, if it's an email or like the I love you versus love you, like do they actually love me or are they just saying it? Like what are those little cues that maybe we can start to look through?
Okay, so what we've been talking about now is a lot of body language cues, right? So we're talking about face-to-face and video, right? A lot of these cues can be used in that. So there are a lot of audio cues. So phone, so just hearing things like, for example, the question inflection is an audio cue. You don't need to see someone for that. Another audio cue is that typically, so right now I'm using the lowest end of my natural voice tone. So everyone has a certain octave range in their voice tone. And when we're confident and we're calm, I have a lot of space, I have oxygen, I can speak nice and low. When I'm nervous, I go a little higher in my voice tone. In fact, one of my tells is that I go really up here and I talk like this because I get a little bit nervous and my vocal cords tense. So when I'm really nervous and my vocal cords tense, I go really high in my vocal range. Now this is still my vocal range, but you can hear that I sound a little bit anxious. So you'll often hear that liars will go up in their range.
And so that's where you go, okay, that's one. You said clusters of three, so that's the one cluster.
Exactly, right. The verbal cues are hard because there are verbal cues to deceit.
Rule number 9, smile more.
Research found is that a real smile, whether it shows teeth or not, the biggest difference is it has to reach up here.
The eyes.
The upper cheek muscles, actually. So those eye crinkles.
I do that a lot, though. I feel like I squint a lot.
You got a little smizing, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually the only cue we're looking for. So it actually does not matter. So if you have a profile picture, a dating profile picture, a LinkedIn profile picture, I either want you neutral or with eye crinkles. The worst is sort of that in between. Now, I don't mind like a soft up mouth, right? So you and I both have this on our book covers, a soft up mouth, but it has to engage those upper cheek muscles. What Dr. Barbara Wild found is that when they showed pictures of people with the fake smile and a real smile. The real smile was contagious. So when people looked at the real smile, they themselves felt happier. When they looked at the fake smile, they felt no mood change.
Interesting.
So the reason why that's important is I think that we think about like, oh, I want to show up, I want to be really my most confident self, but what we don't realize is that our cues are contagious.
Yes.
That if you show authentic happiness, you are more likely to infect happiness. Actually, there's one more face cue I want to talk about. So this is the cue that sort of started me on this crazy journey, and it got me. I'm a recovering awkward person, as you know. So this gave me a lot of relief. Introvert, awkward person, social anxiety, all the good things. So this story gave me so much relief. What they found was, if you are in a room and someone gives you a cue of social rejection.
What does that look like?
Okay, so social rejection, eye roll, a sigh.
Looking away.
Looking away, distancing behavior. When we pull our head back and when I angle my head back, you know I've just disengaged from you.
Crossing arms.
Crossing arms, sudden nonverbal rejection.
Is this turning feet also?
Turning, yes. We can talk about feet.
Yes.
Okay, we can talk about feet.
Hands and feet are so... You know what's interesting? I look at the hands and feet all the time. I can't remember if I got this from you years ago.
This is me.
It's like looking at the hands and seeing, are they in the pocket? Are they not in the pocket?
Yes.
But go ahead before we'll get back to that.
Okay, so social rejection cues, and you know this. If you're in a business meeting and you suddenly feel like, am I disliked? He doesn't like this, she doesn't like this. When we see a cue of social rejection, our field of vision increases.
We see wider.
We literally see wider. Our pupils dilate, so we see more. The reason why that study was like a light bulb for me was our cues are affecting others' physiology. Our physiology can change in a room in an instant. If we walk into a meeting and we feel not liked, if we feel rejected, if we feel like we're being judged, our own physiology responds. So if we're in a room and we're not feeling confident or in control and someone sends us a cue of rejection, one, you want to know what those are because it makes your field of vision bigger so you can see who else is sending me a cue, what's my escape route. That's literally what your body's trying to do.
Yeah.
Ups your adrenaline, ups your cortisol. And no one can think well. Adrenaline, cortisol. That's why in a meeting, it can go downhill so quickly.
Yeah.
You're in a presentation, you prepared all week.
You're like,
And then you're like, oh, he just rolled his eyes. Oh, she just turned away. Oh, I just saw a weird foot movement. And then you lose your spot, you blank out, and the rest of the presentation goes badly. The good news is what Matthew Lieberman found. This is from UCLA. Once you label a cue, so if you say, that was an eye roll, that was a scoff of exasperation, that was a contempt smirk, the moment you label it, your amygdala calms down. They've proven that when people are in fMRI machines and they show them a fearful face, so fearful face is when we widen the whites of our eyes and we raise our eyebrows up. If you're laying in an fMRI machine and you see fear, you will begin to feel afraid. Your amygdala begins to activate and your body goes, well, if he's afraid, I better be afraid. But the moment you say in the fMRI, that's just fear, your amygdala stops responding.
Interesting.
So I think I've had a really hard time finding confidence. It's been a long lifetime journey. The way that I've sort of backdoored into confidence is control. If I can control the cues that are being sent to me, if I can control the cues I'm sending to others, it's a secret backdoor into confidence.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is don't treat people with contempt.
Contempt is a really good one. These C's are especially important for contempt because contempt, you have to make sure you're actually seeing it and why you're seeing it. So contempt, very simply, universally, is a one-sided mouth raise. So if someone just smirks their mouth, either side, right? Yeah, kind of like it's like a smirk. If you try this, by the way, and tap into how you feel, really intuitive people will actually feel kind of better than. Like, yeah, all right, whatever. It's like a better than, it's like a scorn, disdain, it's negative. The problem is most people think of the contempt smirk as okay or half happiness. I see so many profile pictures where people are like, I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? You're showing contempt by accident because it's like apathetic. It's like kind of look cool. But actually, it's an incredibly negative cue. In our body language quiz, we have a body language quiz where we have people just test themselves on facial expressions. Contempt is the number one cue people get wrong. Number one cue, and they usually think it's boredom. And it's the opposite of boredom. So what Dr. John Gottman found, and this is like one of the most incredible research experiments in the book, I think, Dr. John Gottman is a marriage and family counselor in Seattle, and he looked at married couples. And he wanted to know why couples stay together and why couples get divorced, and can you predict it? So he brought couples into his love lab, and he tested them on everything he could think of. So from body language to answers to history to health to children to where they lived to economic status. He looked at everything he could think of, and he found that there was only one single indicator of divorce. That couples who showed contempt, only one member of the couple had to do it, during the initial intake interview were 93% likely to get divorced. 93%. So if one member of the couple in the initial intake interview went, that's my wife.
I see.
Or she's really anal, really obsessive compulsive. And I showed that little contempt. Contempt is the only emotion that doesn't go away. So why this is such a predictor of divorce is because most of our emotions, and this is important to know as decoders, most emotions fade quickly. Happiness comes in a burst and then you go back to normal. Fear comes all at once and you self-soothe. Anger comes and you calm yourself down. But contempt, it's like it sits and it festers. Contempt or disrespect or hatred, if you feel better than someone, feel that better than, and it's not addressed, it grows and it grows, and then you can't even look at your spouse for doing that. You get annoyed with everything they do. That's what that seed of contempt is. And so if you see contempt on someone's face, CCC, is it a cluster? What's the context? Is there any other reason that they could feel contempt? And lastly, confirm. What made them feel contempt? It's not always obvious, by the way. You don't always know why someone shows contempt. I learned this cue many, many years ago, and ever since then, I am very aware of making sure I figure out, is it self-contempt? Like sometimes people feel contempt just of themselves. They don't like their own thought. Sometimes it's something that's being said. Sometimes it's where they are. Sometimes it's that they're hungry. I mean, you don't always know what it is. So that's why I like that last piece of confirming, hey, what's going on? Be like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Sometimes you show me contempt when I talk about X.
Oh.
What is it? What's going on? I think that kind of verbalization is like incredibly powerful for relationships. I would rather you be aware of the cues that are being sent to you to know I want this or I don't, because they are that powerful that if someone has bad intentions, they can still produce trust. And that makes me nervous.
Yeah, I don't think you will ever be able to control stuff like this, but it would be a bit like, oh, I'm not going to teach mixed martial arts because the person might use it to beat somebody up.
That's true.
So it's like, I'd rather have the people that can use it to either, like you have done, overcome awkwardness and use it. I mean, even the book reads very much like a manual for somebody who wants to improve their life, take it to the next level. I think the subheadline on the back of the book, it says like, if you're tired of being overlooked,
underestimated, or interrupted.
Yeah, and underestimated, that was the one that really hit me, was giving people the tools. In fact, we've already talked about this, but being able to give people subtle cues that you want to interject.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, end up getting steamrolled and they get angry at the other person instead of going, I'm going to take control here, to your point.
Yes.
And be able to signal people, and you give this progression of, well, you can start subtle, you can do the fish, whatever, but then, we get to the point where it's like, yo, stop. But being able to give people the tools so that they can be better equipped to do this stuff. And then I definitely like, in relationships, it is so easy to be inside your own head, to have a paranoia about, like, I want to make sure that I'm following this or that I'm coming across well or whatever, that you actually stop reading the cues and then you can get blindsided. I think about this a lot as an employer. Yeah. It's like you're constantly trying to make sure that everybody's okay and that you actually know what's going on inside people's lives. And when somebody will end up hitting a breaking point that you didn't see coming, it's like, did I ignore something? And so, reading nonverbal cues, I think, is about as close to a superpower as you're going to get.
And also vocal cues. We talked about nonverbal, we talked a little about verbal, but I also think that we hear tension. I think that's something that is an underestimated cue that we don't talk about enough. But our voice gives away a lot of our personality and our mental state. It's the other thing that, trust your gut on what you're hearing.
So, talk about the gut.
Yes. Okay. So I think that we know this instinctively, but if we're not listening for it, we ignore it. And that is, I've so been in that place that you just mentioned where you're like, did I miss something? Like, is someone burnt out and I didn't even see these cues coming? And so if you're listening to your gut and your intuition more and you know what you're hearing, I think you're like, I just heard that.
How does the gut work in your mind?
So I think that we have this amazing muscle, right? This amazing, whatever you want to call the brain, this amazing piece of anatomy that is constantly reading all these thousands of cues that are being sent to us. And it gives us a spidey sense. Like, it gives us an intuitive hit of like, something is off. And what we tend to think is we go into productivity mode. Do we meet the deadline? Do we get it done? Was she late? Was she on time? She's been slow to respond to that email, right? Like, when I get that spidey sense, I used to go to task. Right? Like, is there something off in performance or behavior and task? I actually want you to go the other way. I want you to go to communication. I want you to be like, does she sound okay? And let's talk about what does it mean to sound okay?
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
To see the top 10 I did on Esther Perel, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
You hope that it's not because one person hurt you that you lose your faith in humanity. You hope that you know that there are people who are not harmful, that they really are good people that care and love.